What happens when a TV host, known for exposing others, suddenly becomes the story himself? He thought he was in control until his guest turned the tables and revealed the truth on live television. The fallout? Let's just say he never saw it coming. The cameras rolled. The studio lights blazed, their glare bouncing off the polished desk. Millions of Americans tuned in, ready for yet another hard-hitting interview on The Michael Donovan Show, the kind where Donovan, the sharp-tongued liberal host, delighted in making his guests squirm. Tonight's target? Usha Vance, a conservative firebrand, a woman who had made a career out of dismantling media narratives with the precision of a surgeon. And Michael? Oh, he was convinced he had the perfect strategy to break her down, to expose her as just another out-of-touch, fear-mongering politician. He leaned forward, his expression dripping with condescension. His audience lived for this, watching him tear apart guests who dared challenge his worldview. "Usha, let's cut to the chase," he said, his voice soaked in that smug, "I know better than you" tone. "You support policies that many describe as dangerous and regressive. How do you justify asking people to vote for you when your views contradict modern science and, frankly, reality?" A slight chuckle rippled through the studio audience. Michael smirked. He had her. He could feel it. But Usha, she didn't flinch. Instead, she took her time, adjusting the sleeve of her blouse, casually glancing at the camera like she was getting ready to teach a masterclass. Then, with the calm precision of someone who'd done this dance before, she responded, "Michael, it's fascinating to hear you talk about a reality when you've built a career living in a world of manufactured narratives." Silence, a visible shift in the air. Michael blinked, not the reaction he expected. What exactly do you mean?" He forced a chuckle, gripping his pen a little tighter. Usha tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Deadly calm. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "Take, for example, your article from last year. You remember the one where you conveniently misinterpreted economic data to fit your talking points?" Michael froze. The control he thought he had? Slipping. The camera zoomed in. A bead of sweat formed near his temple. He reached for his water, hesitated. His fingers tightened around his pen. The studio? Silent. Even the crew, used to his verbal takedowns, leaned in. This was not going the way he had planned, and everyone knew it. And this? This was just the beginning. Next up, the pressure builds, and Michael realizes he's not in control anymore. What happens next? Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Michael Donovan wasn't used to losing control. His entire career had been built on domination, on setting the stage, on dictating the narrative. He thrived on watching his guests fumble, sweat, scramble for words as he backed them into a rhetorical corner. But tonight, the cracks were showing. He could feel it, the energy in the studio shifting, the once friendly audience turning into something else, something hungrier. And Usha Vance? She sat across from him, perfectly composed, her expression unreadable. She wasn't squirming, she wasn't panicked. She wasn't playing the game the way his usual guest did. She was leading it. Michael needed to turn this around, fast. He took a breath, squared his shoulders, and went in for the kill. "Let's not get distracted, Usha." He straightened his tie, his voice taking on that carefully measured, authoritative tone that had served him well over the years. "Your views are controversial. They divide people. You deny fundamental rights. Oh, so now we're talking about division?" Usha cut in, folding her arms across her chest. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, sharp enough to slice through the tension like a knife. Michael clenched his jaw. "You, Michael Donovan, the man who has spent years dividing this country into progressive and backwards, are suddenly concerned about unity?" A quiet laugh from somewhere in the control room. Michael's fingers twitched against the desk. He felt it. The audience felt it. The balance of power was shifting. For the first time in a long time, Michael Donovan wasn't in control of the room. He had to push back, hard. "Usha, let's be honest here." "Oh, so now you want to be honest?" She arched an eyebrow, tilting her head slightly. "In that case, let's talk about your record, Michael. Let's talk about your so-called journalistic integrity." Michael's stomach dropped. He knew where this was going. A second later, the studio screens lit up. A headline from 5 years ago, one of his own articles, the one where he had publicly discredited a whistleblower who had later been proven right. Michael's name was all over it. His words, his accusations, his denials of a scandal that turned out to be completely true. The studio went dead silent. Michael's throat went dry. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. The audience had come here to watch him take her apart, to see him expose her as misinformed, unprepared, incapable of defending her positions. Instead, they were staring at him, and they didn't look happy. Back at home, social media was already on fire. Comments flooded in. Wait, did she just pull up receipts on him? Oh, this is bad. Dude just got exposed in 4K. How do you come back from this? Answer, you don't. I can't believe I used to take this guy seriously. Michael forced a chuckle, gripping the edge of the desk. He had to salvage this. Look, Usha, he said, shifting in his chair. That's an oversimplification of events. You know as well as I do that context matters. Absolutely, she nodded. So let's give the full context, shall we? She gestured to the screen. The footage continued playing. A younger Michael Donovan, 5 years ago, sitting in that same chair, saying the words, "This so-called whistleblower is nothing more than a disgruntled employee. Their claims have no credibility, and frankly, it's irresponsible to spread conspiracy theories like this." The video cut, back to present-day Michael Donovan, the man who had spent years building a brand around exposing lies, holding people accountable, demanding transparency. And now he was sitting under the same microscope, and he did not like it. Michael clenched his fists under the table. He could feel the audience's eyes on him, judging, processing, remembering. He had built his career on moments like this, on holding people's feet to the fire, on refusing to let them wriggle their way out of tough questions. Now he was living it. And he had no answers. Usha leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough to make it personal. Michael, you spent years demanding accountability from everyone else. Don't you think it's time you held yourself to the same standard? A ripple of murmurs in the audience. Michael's face tightened. He had to end this. Now. He straightened his posture, adjusting his tie with quick, deliberate movements. We're not here to talk about me, Usha. Oh, but we are, she smiled, not a friendly smile. The kind that said, I see you. The kind that made people squirm. The kind Michael had perfected over the years. Only this time, he was on the receiving end. The internet wasn't letting this go. She flipped the whole script. He's done. The irony is beautiful. This is exactly what he does to other people. Oh, now he doesn't want to talk about accountability? Man's career just took a direct hit on live TV. Michael could feel it slipping away. His usual charm, useless. His reputation, hanging by a thread. And Usha, cool as ever. Because she wasn't just winning. She was controlling the game now. You don't want to miss what happens next. Stay tuned. Michael Donovan had spent years crafting his image, the fearless, no-nonsense host who could dismantle anyone with a sharp question and a well-timed smirk. But tonight, the smirk was gone. His shoulders were tense, his eyes darted between the audience, the cameras, and, most dangerously, Usha Vance, who sat across from him like a chess player watching their opponent, realized they were already checkmated. But Michael wasn't ready to concede, not yet. He leaned forward, gripping the desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. You're twisting my words, he snapped, his voice edged with frustration. I am simply holding you accountable for Oh, please. Usha's voice was soft, but the weight behind it? Heavy. She didn't raise her voice, didn't lean forward. She just sat there, watching him unravel. Then she asked the one question that would send him over the edge. You're coming after me so aggressively because you're afraid, aren't you? Michael's entire body stiffened. The words landed like a slap. The audience sucked in a collective breath, a moment of silence. Then he snapped. Me? Afraid? His voice spiked, almost cracking under the pressure. Are you serious right now? Usha didn't move, didn't flinch. She just tilted her head slightly, her expression still unreadable. Of course you're afraid, she said, her tone smooth even, because deep down you know the truth isn't on your side. And that That was it. Michael exploded. That is absurd. He slammed his palm on the desk. This is ridiculous. You're just... But then something happened. The studio screens flickered. A breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Breaking news. Investigative report exposes Michael Donovan's manipulation of political investigations. Michael froze. The air in the studio turned ice cold. It wasn't just a headline. It was his worst nightmare unfolding in real time. His face paled as his eyes locked onto the screen. The words were right there, staring him down, as if mocking him for every time he had ever demanded accountability from someone else. And the audience? Oh, they saw everything. The gasps, the murmurs, the sudden shift in energy. People were whispering, leaning toward each other. The live chat was moving at the speed of light. Oh my God, I did not see this coming. Bro just got exposed on his own show. This is like watching a car crash in slow motion. Michael's breath hitched. His carefully built empire was crumbling in front of millions. Panic mode activated. He shot up from his chair so fast that the microphone clipped against his jacket, causing a screech of static. Beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. His hands shook as he pointed toward the cameras. This is a setup. His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. This is a smear campaign. Fake news. A total fabrication. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. It was one of those moments where time seemed to slow down. Michael stood there, breathing heavily, waiting for some kind of validation, a reaction, a lifeline. But all he got was silence. Then, Usha moved. She stood up, slowly, deliberately. Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked around the desk, microphone in hand. She turned to the audience, then to the camera, and then straight at Michael. Her voice was calm, unshaken, absolute. No, Michael. She lifted the mic closer. This isn't a setup. This is justice. The final blow. The audience erupted. Some gasped, others whispered, but most just stared, because everyone knew what had just happened. Michael Donovan, the man who had made a career out of exposing others, had just been exposed on national television, and there was no coming back from this. The broadcast cut to black. The studio lights dimmed. The crew hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure whether to move or stay frozen in place. Nobody had seen a takedown like that before. Michael Donovan sat there, staring blankly at the desk in front of him, the weight of his unraveling career pressing down on his shoulders. His earpiece buzzed. His producer was saying something, probably damage control strategies. But it was just white noise to him now, because deep down, he knew. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was the end of an era. And while Michael sat in stunned silence, the real storm had already begun online. Social media exploded within seconds of the show ending. She destroyed him. I've never seen anyone get shut down like that on live TV. That moment when Michael realized he lost... Oh, that was beautiful. Not him sweating bullets while trying to spin his way out of it. This is peak television. Usha didn't just win. She turned his own platform against him. The clips spread like wildfire. Reaction videos flooded in. Political commentators, independent streamers, and everyday viewers dissected every moment of the showdown. The instant replay of Michael's face when the scandal dropped became a meme within minutes. And the best part? The network couldn't bury it. Michael's show had aired live. No edits, no damage control. The raw footage was already out there, being clipped, shared, and analyzed in real time. And the ratings. A total collapse. By the next morning, the numbers were in. Michael's show had tanked. What was once a primetime powerhouse was now bleeding viewers. His employer, the very network that had given him years of airtime, that had propped him up as the voice of reason, released a carefully worded statement. We are reviewing our editorial policies and remain committed to journalistic integrity. Translation: Michael was on borrowed time. The network wasn't defending him. They weren't calling Usha's statements false. They were distancing themselves. He had become radioactive. And Usha, She was doing exactly what you'd expect from someone who had just pulled off one of the greatest televised takedowns in recent history. Somewhere across the city, in a quiet cafe, Usha Vance sat at a corner table, scrolling through her phone. The messages poured in: supporters, political allies, even people who had never paid much attention to her before were suddenly reaching out. Incredible. Flawless execution. You did what no one else could. Her phone buzzed again. Her assistant, grinning ear to ear, slid into the seat across from her. You're trending at #1. Every major outlet is covering it. Usha took a slow sip of her coffee. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't celebrating. She had simply done what needed to be done. Her assistant leaned in, eager to get a read on her mood. So, how does it feel? Usha smirked, setting down her cup, like finishing a great meal. She exhaled, a hint of amusement in her voice. Asterisk, asterisk. He picked his own menu. The final shot, Usha standing up, adjusting her blazer and walking out of the cafe. Behind her, a screen replayed the viral moment from the night before, and Michael Donovan, nowhere to be seen.